Welcome to the Commonwealth Conservative podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff Semon. I'm here with the man of the hour, the man of the minute, the man who is in it to win it, Mr. State Representative Shawn Dooley. Shawn, how are you today?
Not bad, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, we've got a very important guest, a good guy.
We do.
A guy who is running for United States Senate as the Senate Republican nominee, Mr. Kevin O'Connor. Kevin, welcome to the Commonwealth Conservative podcast. Good to see you.
Great to see you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, a month from now, we're not going to be able to get him because, now he's still a candidate. A little over 30 days from now when he wins, he's going to be too big for us.
Will you remember us and be able to say back when?
Oh yes, gentlemen. Absolutely. And we're gonna have a fun tour of the Senate chamber.
There we go. Awesome.
How's the campaign going so far?
Great.
You having fun?
I love it. We have such a great state, and people are really kind. I have encountered very few. I don't know what the
jackasses.
Yes,
I think that's the technical term.
Yes, that technical term. Very few people have been great. So.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I love campaigning. One of the tough things about COVID is you don't get to go to the ball games and the door to door is a little bit harder, and all the different parties and celebrations. You're kind of missing out on that, which is hard for you from as a challenger to be able to get that in front of that many people.
Yeah, the good thing for me is that I have no experience, so I don't know anything different in terms of campaigning. And I think if I had been through other campaigns, this might be more troubling. This is what I know, and I know people are hurting, so they want adaptable people who are not whiners, and I'm an adaptable person who's not a whiner. So we're bringing it.
Wouldn't it be nice to not have whiners representing us in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yes.
Just able to, doers, just able to get things done, not complain about everything, just say, all right, you know what, nose to the grindstone.
I don't think they're capable of doing that.
But Kevin is. Once he gets down there, he can teach them.
Oh, Kevin is. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. The current
federal representation is hardly at that point.
Yes.
So Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this is our inaugural podcast. It's our very first one. We're still building out the studio a little bit. So hopefully we look, we've pieced it pretty well together, but we're a few little details that are still going to be getting tweaked. And and as we evolve, hopefully we'll get our sound better, some of the lighting better, and things like that. I couldn't ask for I was hoping that you would be our very first guest. I really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday night away from your family to come on and do this with us. So it's hopefully this is going to be an ongoing thing, and we'll be able to say, remember when.
Tell us what for all the people out there, what's the website? How can they support you? Just to get that out of the way, we'll do that at the end too, but make sure we.
Website is KOCforsenate.com. KOC is in Kevin O'Connor, and then FORsenate.com. KOC is the opposite of AOC.
There you
I like the sound of that.
And that was not an accident. There was some thought was put into that. And in terms of help, we need all forms of help. We need people's votes, and I'm asking for it right now, and I'll ask at the end of the podcast. We need all forms of social media. If you want to signs are great. Bumper stickers, and then money. Send lawyers, guns, and money, baby.
Exactly. There you go.
KOCforsenate.com. Check it out for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got a little present for you. And I know people at home probably can't see this, but we're on opposite ends, kitty corner on the table. So in case Charlie's watching from home, we're a good 8+ feet apart. So there's, we wanted to make sure we had the social distancing, but I got you a face mask, a Commonwealth Conservative face mask, which I will throw over.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's our first piece of swag that we actually have, first and only piece of swag we have on the show. But nevertheless, thank you very much for coming on, and there we go. Hey, look at that! It's very, very fancy.
I'll be wearing it tomorrow with pride. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
So hey, for those of the few folks at home that don't know about you, why don't you give a good, your elevator speech about who you are and why you're running? Because I mean, that's what sold me on endorsing you. When I first met you, it wasn't about Markey. It wasn't about Kennedy. It was about leadership, representing the Commonwealth, helping the people back here at home. So you are much more eloquent than I am. So why don't you go and say a few words?
So I am the common sense candidate. I am not a career politician. I'm a dad. I have 4 boys, 2 of whom are in public schools. I am a lawyer by training. I went to Boston College Law School, and I've been a lawyer in Massachusetts for the last 30 years. I handle mainly business cases, but I've had the opportunity to do a lot of work on pro bono and social justice issues and diversity and inclusion. And I'm running because I'm concerned about our country, and I'm concerned about the policy directions that are being embraced, particularly by young people. I'm concerned about the tone of our politics, the polarization that is really, I think, epitomized by the way Senator Markey conducts himself. He proposes bumper slogan, really simplistic solutions that are absolutely devoid of any foundation in terms of science or economics or anything like that. And then he just sits in his bunker from a position of weakness and just tries to paint himself in a safe position within his party on the presumption that he'll then get reelected. And that is unfortunately typical of what we're getting from Washington. We can do so much better. I have a career of working with people across the aisle and in all different coalitions and collaborating with people. That's what my clients do in the real world here in Massachusetts, and I want to bring that to Washington.
Yeah, having some real world experience would be, I mean, with Markey been there 40 something years. I mean, basically his entire life he's been in elected office.
Literally my entire life. He was elected the year I was born.
There we go.
Well, and I think it's 1/5 of the country's history, or something approximating that. Ed Markey has been in Congress for 1/5 of United States history.
Wow.
And he is whining about all the changes that need to be made, supposedly, when he has failed to do anything about them for 44 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if Jeff, you can pull up the newspaper article that talked about his his Green New Deal. I mean, he was able to do this Green New Deal, and this was his triumph, and talked about it all throughout the campaign and everything like that. But when it actually came down to a vote on the Senate, he voted present on his own bill. I mean, he goes, "Oh, well, this is a mockery. Oh, they're trying to force a vote." And I'm like, dude, you're the one that wrote this. This is your baby. You're not willing to stand up and defend it. You don't have the you-know-whats to say, this is what we're here, this is what's needed, and this is what we're going to do. So, I mean, that's just amazing. The fact that Joe Kennedy didn't hit him on the fact that he didn't even have the you-know-whats to stand up for his own bill.
He voted present.
Yes.
Present.
Yeah. Appalling. So where I come from, if you offer an idea and you claim credit for it, you ought to vote for it. And only in Washington can someone have a press conference, announce with great fanfare that he's introducing a bill, and then when it's put up for a vote a few weeks later, vote present. It's the sort of thing that discredits government. And more importantly, what he's done is identify a real issue, an important issue, and he has contributed to the gridlock with respect to that. So it's not merely ineffective; it is counterproductive. And I think it's really important for all of us to be mindful of the common sense reality that your colleagues in the United States Senate inevitably lose respect for you if you don't have the courage and decency to vote for a bill that you've offered to the Senate. So,
hey Kevin, I got a question for you. When you're out on the campaign trail as much as possible, and you're talking to all the voters out there, how many? I got to imagine you're running into some Democrats who are saying that, Markey is pulling so far out of the mainstream. I mean, about to play a clip of what he talked about, abolishing ICE. I mean, real dangerous stuff that I know you've talked about a lot on your campaign. But I mean, when you're on the ground, I'm not out there as much as you are. What's that like as far as who you're talking to?
Absolutely. So I am going to JFK Democrat traditional strongholds. I was in South Boston last night. I've been in New Bedford. I've been, you name it, Pittsfield. People do not respect what he has done. Ed Markey has rebranded himself from a liberal to an AOC, Bernie Sanders, really essentially a Democratic socialist, that wing of the party. And along the way, in order to win his primary, he vilified police officers. He wants to defund the police, abolish ICE, pack the Supreme Court. The average common sense voter in Massachusetts, 67% of whom voted for a Republican 2 years ago, do not like this stuff. They're smart. And what I'm hearing from Democrats, a lot of Democrats, the traditional JFK Democrats, is no way. So my sense is that there is a shock coming in this election. I think there is a silent majority out there, people of common sense, who have had enough with this.
I know a lot of people I talk to, just have the perception of it's all just spin with him. There's no substance. It's all soundbite, and like we talked about, voting president. Actions speak louder than words. He doesn't. Do you actually believe in anything? Do you really stand for anything? If right now it's popular to be defund the police amongst his little small crowd. Where was this 6 months ago, before any of this? Nothing, not a freaking word from him ever. And then all of a sudden it hits the news, and he's, that's been my cause all along. I've just never said anything about it.
Exactly. 44 years, he has done essentially nothing on race relations, and his claims about the urgency of police reform and systemic racism, the way he just bandies these terms about and has done nothing on them for 44 years. What he is doing is trying to exploit a crisis for political gain. And the reality is that what he's doing is vilifying real people, our police officers and their families. Police officers have really tough jobs.
Well, exactly.
Let's
can you play that?
Yeah, let's play
that
clip.
clip.
Speaking of real people, this is Markey recently, this past summer, at a rally at the State House. Hopefully we get the sound here.
There we go. Got the sound. It's working.
We should abolish Trump's ICE deportation army.
Can I pause it right there? That hurts me as an American. That this is such an un-American statement to vilify law enforcement officers as some type of Gestapo army that's on the streets of the country. I get a little. I want to get to. We're not going to curse yet on this podcast, but I get a little fired up.
Well, you know I'm going to do it sooner or later.
Yeah,
so
I'd rather you break the ice on this than me. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, but here it gets worse.
Create that pathway to citizenship instead of terrorizing people. We should be welcoming
Terrorizing. Oh, sorry.
them to the United States of America. So keep fighting. I am with you. We will win. Si se puede.
So that's normal, right?
Yeah.
Is that normal for a United States senator to do?
Yeah, because guys that I know that work for ICE are just trolling the streets and just randomly rounding up people like brown shirts. That's what they do. These guys have one of the hardest jobs.
Absolutely.
They're going into places. I have a good friend that's in ICE. He's like, listen, there's only 100 of us in New England. We're not like this, for all of New England. And we're going into these places. The only people we're going after are really, really, really bad guys.
Yeah.
We don't have the time. Nobody's picking up the landscaper or the cleaning lady. They're picking up the MS-13. They're picking up the major drug dealers, the murderers, the rapists, the really, really, really bad people. Because they're like, there's not enough of us to do it. And we're going in this. And for him to say that these are horrible people,
I think Markey gets all of us fired up.
Oh,
so
I
it's
know.
fair enough.
I'm just so furious just because I have friends that are putting themselves in harm's way to protect our country, and this is how he treats them.
Yeah, this is why I'm running, and so it's counterfactual, it is false, it's utterly false, it defies human experience. We know it doesn't exist, and he is preying upon apprehension and anxiety and creating a false narrative in order to advance his political career at the expense of our society and our country. It needs to stop, and we can stop it on November 3rd. And I'm telling you, common sense people who live in the real world, who are subjected to the crimes that the perps that ICE apprehends, they care about safe neighborhoods. It's the most basic requirement of any successful organization or activity is we start with safety.
Is that the number one thing you're hearing on the trail?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, my campaign has been made very simple courtesy of Ed Markey. I'm running on safe neighborhoods, good jobs, and common sense unity, meaning unity not through cancel culture or capitulation or political correctness, but through true engagement and pursuit of liberty and justice for all Americans, the highest ideals of our country. And
I mean, it's just so divisive, and he's putting these guys into a position where they're trying to do their jobs, and they're arresting bad guys, and you're turning the community against them. So, now they're going into a dangerous situation, and he is, as a United States Senator, making their jobs more difficult and, more importantly, more dangerous, because he's basically saying their lives don't matter because they're, Nazis or Gestapo or whatever he's implying is that they are the evil and they must be stopped at all costs. So he's telling the people in the communities, hey, don't worry about taking a shot at it.
And he's doing the same thing with police officers. Violence against the police this year is on the rise. Ed Markey, the Monday morning after the assassination attempt on the 2 LA police officers, the next morning he talked about how the Portland police he just accused them of horrible things and demanded that weapons of war, which included beanbags,
Oh, yeah.
weapons of war had to be taken away from our police officers. He is no exaggeration. This is not political speak. He is purposefully vilifying police officers, ICE agents, and other law enforcement. He is doing it purely for political gain. It's not true. We know it's not true, and it is really harmful to our society. And what we need to do is to send him get him out.
Yeah. Even that clip, he called them terrorists.
Right.
Terrorists.
Terrorizing. I mean, there's no simpler way to say it.
But he hates them so much. For the last 44 years, he's been posing in pictures, using them on his literature, showing up at their funerals, saying how much he stands with them, because that was popular then. And then all of a sudden, literally now they're the devil.
Finger in the wind, baby.
Right. I mean,
absolutely. And it's terrible. And what's really sad about it is that there's a real crisis here. There are legitimate concerns that people need to talk about. The Senate, Senator Scott actually offered a police reform bill, and the Republicans offered to debate it on the Senate floor for 25 hours in public, with the benefit of up to 25 amendments from Senator Markey and his colleagues in the Democratic caucus. So just imagine in June if the world, what had formerly been the world's greatest deliberative body, had an open 25-hour debate on Senator Scott's bill, the Democrats' police reform proposals, and people could have laid out for senators could have laid out for the American people the substantive arguments for all the proposed changes and the substantive arguments against any particular change. It would have been beautiful. It would have been unifying and clarifying, I think, for a lot of people. Senator Markey voted against debate because he always votes against debate. He's the same guy who voted present for his own Green New Deal. He is afraid of meaningful engagement.
Yeah. So all sound, no substance, all soundbite. I mean, that's who he is, and that's who he always has been. I mean, that's the crazy thing is, how they've rebranded him and how the press is like, oh, he's this champion. Literally, you've done nothing for all of these years. There's, as a state rep, I mean, our politics don't agree, but if I need something, I reach out to Elizabeth Warren's office. Yeah. They're responsive, they help, they do whatever they can. I have never gotten a return phone call from anyone in Ed Markey's office.
Ed Markey is an absentee landlord, basically. He shows up every 6 years when he needs to get reelected. And other than that, he lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland. We all know it. It's an open secret. Congressman Kennedy effectively exposed his lack of return to the district. He's weak on constituent service. He doesn't get around the state. And one of the biggest challenges that I face as a challenger is helping people envision the possibility of a fully engaged United States senator who's dialed in, who knows Shawn Dooley a lot. To his credit, Congressman Kennedy really dialed in on local issues and was a voice for the state and for our communities in Washington. Paul Tsongas model. Right. Paul Tsongas knew where every pothole was, and he was playing at the same time at a national level on a substantive basis. Our state is the greatest state in the country, which is the greatest country in the world. And we ought to have a lot more juice than we have right now. We have one senator who is, I think, kind of a perpetual presidential aspirant, if you will.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fair.
Talented and purposeful, but she's a perennial presidential aspirant. And you have another senator who is central casting for term limits. He's not dialed into the community. Yep. He's living in D.C. or Chevy Chase, Maryland, and he comes back on an as-needed basis, and we suffer for it. Shawn, what percentage of our state budget is derived from federal funds?
Yeah, and because of our entire delegation being all one party, we're not even, when the Republicans are in control, we're not even an afterthought. We don't even get a seat at the table. I mean, one of the things that I've always stressed to people, and I think this is one of the reasons we all often have a Republican governor, is that the people of Massachusetts understand balance. They understand the pragmatic approach that we need to at least have one person at the table when the Republicans are in power. If it's only Democrats and 100% of the time the Democrats are going to vote for the president, why is there any reason to give Massachusetts anything?
Yes.
And what's worse is, guess what? When the Democrats are in power, we still get nothing.
Yes.
Because, they're safe. What are they going to do? Vote for the Republican? We don't care. We still don't have to give them anything. Let's take care of Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and those. The Republicans will get more under a Democratic control because they're trying to at least ingratiate themselves with the people of that state. We're just an afterthought because we are such a automatic check mark for the Democratic Party, and we have no one down there fighting for us to say, hey, listen, we're not just a one-party state. We have a very diverse culture.
I think that's the first I've ever heard the second half of that argument, where even when Democrats are in power, we still don't get it.
No, I mean, look at where the Democrats campaign. Is Biden campaigning here?
Yeah.
Is he spending money? A little bit on the airways only for New Hampshire, but he's not doing rallies, in Worcester and New Bedford and things like that, unless it's for a fundraiser. But he doesn't care because he knows we're one of the states that's off the board. Same with California. We were one of these states that were like, it doesn't matter.
And related to that, I would ask people to envision, let's fast forward to next March, and if you're a mayor, a city councilor, a state rep, a governor, anyone, and you have an issue where you need support from our federal delegation, do you feel more confident that you'd succeed if you brought that to Senator Warren and Senator Markey, both in the Democratic caucus, Or would you be more optimistic about your chances if you could bring it to Senator Warren in the Democratic caucus and Senator O'Connor in the Republican caucus? That's juice. We'll have that. We'll have immediately bipartisan representation to speak on behalf of all of our community.
Yep, because you need a majority. I mean, it's just math.
And it's a 6-year term.
Right.
So the likelihood that either party is controlling one branch of government at any given time is within 6 years is pretty high.
100%. And it's just about, from the standpoint of everybody having a voice. And I think that's one of the problems with Markey is he's become so divisive and so focused on the alt-left, far left socialist agenda that even a lot of my friends that are relatively, I would call traditional liberals, feel completely disenfranchised by him because he doesn't care about them because he's pandering so much to this extreme that he's completely abandoned his traditional base to go after this new, hot, new, young, flavor of the week.
Yeah.
You might get in trouble there.
I was starting to go down that path, and I'm like, oh, rein it back. Flavor of the week. Is flavor of the week okay? Does that work?
That works.
Okay.
That works.
But we have such a bright future, even amidst this crisis. We have such great upside as a country, and especially Massachusetts, when you think about artificial intelligence, quantum computing, all the innovation, biotech we have going on here, and you combine that with the growing recognition that there's a connection between mental health and wellness and outcomes and productivity and addressing social programs. The combination of those things at this moment in time is our ability to harness all that is greater than ever before. And if we have people who appreciate the capacity for innovation that you see even with Project Warp Speed, right? We have a major problem with COVID-19. The world has turned to the United States, the private sector primarily, or private sector entirely, but the United States primarily, and largely Massachusetts, because we're the problem solvers. We have so much upside. But we have to make sure that our senators are helping us get to promote the innovation, make sure that the federal dollars are coming to our research institutions and to our infrastructure to make it happen. But there's bright, beautiful things. My campaign is about so much more than the deficiencies of Ed Markey.
So let's get into some of that. I mean, Ed Markey, he loves to tout himself as the environmental, advocate. He wants his Green New Deal. We know there's a lot of pitfalls about that, but the reason why a platform like this exists and why Shawn wanted to create it was so we could have enough time and bandwidth to get a common sense, comprehensive message of what our side can actually put out there. So you're going to be in the United States Senate. Climate change is an issue. Energy is an issue. I know there's massive taxes and shut everything down in the Green New Deal. What are some of the things you're thinking about doing while you're down in D.C. for that?
Yeah, so the Green New Deal is, to be clear, far more than just an environmental program. There's a fellow named Saikat Chakrabarty who was AOC's chief of staff, and he's her primary policy advisor. And he said in 2019, he was quoted publicly saying that the Green New Deal began as an overhaul the American economy thing. And then what they realized is that as a branding matter, if they labeled it as an environmental program, it would sell better. And so it really is, it's a utopian plan. And as we know from 20th century history, most utopian plans don't end well. It talks about cutting the defense budget in half. It talks about free college for everyone. It talks about a guaranteed federal job for every American. So every employer in America would have to compete with the federal government in order to hire people. The distortion of our labor markets that would be caused by that absurd program are mind-boggling. And that's all in the Green New Deal. There is no way to pay for it. And its greatest failing is that or it's not as great. All of its failings are just enormous, and each one each of the failings renders it completely unworthy of any serious consideration. But from an environmental perspective, it would have us move within 10 years to renewable energy. So solar, wind, hydro, maybe geothermal. And the reality is that in the next 10 years, that power is not sufficiently efficient or cost effective to power the grid. It is scientifically impossible. And what the bill or it's a resolution calls for is that carbon neutrality would be achieved in 10 years. You can't do it.
Yeah, the technology is not there. Even if money was no object, you can't do it.
You can't do it. The storage capacity isn't there. The sun doesn't shine all the time and the wind doesn't blow all the time is the simplest way to put it. And the efficiency of those technologies is nowhere near what it needs to be. And so Senator Markey's not interested in the Green New Deal. It doesn't look at non-carbon producing forms of energy such as nuclear. And nuclear they want nuclear taken off the grid.
Yes.
Not even keeping the existing
right,
plants.
exactly,
Nuclear
which actually puts us further behind the 8 ball of achieving carbon neutral.
Yes, and then there's a categoric dismissal of nuclear technology. There's nuclear technology on the horizon that would be at a much smaller scale and would not even involve the reactor technology. It would be so much safer, and it's on the horizon. It isn't necessarily going to be an answer, but the intelligent approach is to plow a ton of money into research, and to promote innovation in a portfolio of different ideas that can help solve the problem. So that's greater efficient. It's gravitation toward natural gas. It's greater efficiency for the investment in solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, all of that. It's investment in carbon capture. There's tremendous technology on the horizon where we will be able to draw carbon out of the atmosphere. And Senator Markey's bill would not permit use of gas that could then be recaptured through carbon capture.
Well, and as I say, and I know we're talking about green energy and everything like that. Just for the record, the Commonwealth Conservative podcast, our studio is we're off the grid. We have geothermal, we have solar. We built it all at tier 3 green energy. So we no fossil fuels running. Our particular podcast. So it's one of those things. It's important to me, and it's important to most Americans of being a good steward to our planet, not from a punitive standpoint, but because it's the right thing to do, and economically it makes sense. And from a national security standpoint, we lose our dependence on foreign oil, and globally oil becomes less of an issue. Guess what? A lot of the funding for the terrorism goes away.
Yes.
And poof, and nobody ever talks about that. And that's one of the things I think where we as Republicans get kind of a bad rap from the standpoint of, somehow the Democrats have taken the high road and they're like, we're the ones that care about the environment. Baloney. I mean, Republicans are, we're the sportsmen, we're the naturalists, we're the people out there, the farmers, the people that are actually working on the land that really, really respect the earth and need the earth and understand.
Yep.
And so that's one of the things that I think as a party we should really take back. And if we make the argument that this is about, this isn't just about we're going to penalize you, we're going to tax you more if you don't do that. So let's incentivize things. Let's explain why you need to do them, and let's help our industry grow and be competitive and come up with better solar, better wind, better geo, and all of these things. And if the will is there, we have the intellect in this country.
And it's not an abstraction. There's a very real example in our lifetime. President Carter in 1979 had a State of the Union address where he told the American people that the world would run out of fossil fuel by 2020. The President of the United States, and he was an engineer, he was a substantial person, and some people may have disagreed at that point and thought he was going too far. But that was what the President of the United States was telling the American people. He did not anticipate the technological innovations on the part of the energy industry that have made the United States not merely out of fossil fuel. We're an energy superpower, and we have enormous abundance, and we have great jobs that have been created by that. It was technological advancement. The same thing is true with respect to smog. LA used to be smog-ridden, packed with cars, right? And Senator Markey's answer would have been just take all the cars off the road.
And tax everybody some more.
And tax everybody. What was invented was the catalytic converter. Now the air in LA, downtown LA, it's
normal.
It's normal. And that's because of advances in technology, not the punitive top-down central command model.
Well, it's a good segue into this, because the economics of this is really important. Because natural gas is a great bridge fuel to get us to a more sustainable green future and away from oil, because it, like we said, it is 1/3 as pollutant as oil and gas. But this is his lack of understanding of basic economics that needs to be shown and called out. And it's a quick clip here.
Op-ed piece in USA Today, Congressman Ed Markey of Massachusetts, along with his colleague in the Senate, Ron Wyden of Oregon, said that energy is needed here at home and that exporting it could cause prices to skyrocket from these very low prices we're seeing here lately.
Well, indeed, and he's here himself. Congressman Markey joins us exclusively to talk about the economic consequences of exporting energy. Congressman, great to have you on our show. Explain in your own words why you think we need to keep natural gas here.
Well, natural gas is a domestic market, whereas oil is part of an international market. So, for example, right now...
Okay. Now, this is from 8 years ago. Now, Dum Dum doesn't understand.
Ranking member of Natural Resources Committee.
Okay.
Just so you know, so he supposedly has some expertise and knowledge in this particular field, has had people pitch things to him.
But the common sense part of this is, if it were a purely domestic market, we wouldn't be able to be even talking about exporting it. But right on the screen, timeout on gas exports. The reason why we can even think and talk about exporting it, which we should, because it would be, if natural gas is 1/3 as polluting as oil, wouldn't we want that to go across the world? Wouldn't we want to expand that market and cut down on carbon emissions? The fact that we're even talking about doing it means it's not a domestic market. He is a dope. He does not even understand the economics of his supposed key issue. This guy, all right, I'm getting all fired up. I'm going to kick it off to you, but this is how inept he is with his economic policy.
Yes, absolutely.
Gas in the United States is approximately 6 times...
I'm going to kick off that, and then we'll get back to...
We're still working through the technical
difficulties. He said it was a national market, not an international market, and yet we can export it.
Correct. Yeah, that's how inept he is at economics. I mean, if and there's the stuff he wants to give everybody free money, which
yes, and I'll get to that. But we're being hard on him because this is really consequential stuff. This is going to change lives, change our future, and he needs a clue as to science and economics in order to do anything other than hurt us. But with taking that cue, Senator Markey's lack of economic clarity has most recently led him to propose that under the guise of COVID-19 relief, the federal government should pay every person in the United States, not every citizen, every person in the United States, $2,000 a month, dating back to March through the duration, of the COVID-19 crisis, however long that is. So that's $96,000 $1,000 a year for a family of 4. Again, regardless of citizenship. I think it's roughly $6 trillion a year, which is more than the federal budget.
It's fantasy land.
And the money's coming from, does he have a plan for the money? Are we just going to, are we going to tax the rich? Is that what, we're going to tax that 1%, 100%, and because they can't move or anything?
Jim Browdy asked him that question with incredulity, just said, Ed, please, what in God's, how are you going to pay for this? And he said he would repeal the Bush tax cuts and the Trump tax cuts. And that would generate $6 trillion a year to pay for COVID-19 relief, not to mention the rest of the federal budget, the entire federal budget.
Because all these liberal companies that really, really love, all these social causes that have moved back to America because of the economic policy and the tax rate, would then just move back to Ireland or wherever they were. I mean, isn't that where Apple was based? It basically had all their finances running through, Ireland because of our tax policy. And so because these are billion-dollar, trillion-dollar international companies, they're going to go wherever it suits them. They're not doing it. They're not nationalistic. They don't care about helping out the little guy. They say they do in their commercial, but in reality, it's all about stockholders and it's and paying out dividends. So, this fallacy that we're a captured market.
Yes.
The billionaires will just move. They'll go offshore. The companies are going to move and they'll just change their headquarters. It's not like they have to build a new office in Ireland or in Belgium or in the Bahamas. They already have an office there. It's easy. They would just all right, we're changing our incorporation documents. Guess what? The letterhead now has us being out of the Grand Caymans.
Flight of capital.
Right.
Absolutely. So those tax cuts, which were productivity enhancing, they generated, certainly the Trump tax cut generated more revenue the year after the cut than it did than was generated the year before. So it was revenue producing. Those tax cuts couldn't come remotely close to paying $6 trillion a year. So his plan is completely devoid of any foundation in economics. And then in addition, as you were pointing out, Shawn, the flight of capital that would occur, we can jack up corporate tax rates, and the inevitable consequence of that will be that corporations will move overseas. American workers will lose jobs. American employees will be compromised. It hurts all of us, and it pushes away job-creating entities that are the innovators that will help us solve our climate change challenges, help cure COVID-19 and the next pandemic. So it's all of his solutions. The recurring theme is they're devoid of foundation economically or science in terms of science, and he has no way to pay for them, and doesn't want to debate. He won't even debate me a second time in order to dig into any of these issues.
Well, and I think that just pretty much defines him. I think the ongoing theme throughout this entire conversation tonight has been his divisive nature. It's, we're going to pit the, blacks against the whites, the rich against the poor, the, whoever against the police or ICE or anything like that. And it's, there's no, what are we doing for America? And let's, the Kennedy mantra of a rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah. What happened to that? This is all us versus them, and it's if you're not with us, you're against us. BS. That's just not American, and that's you want to have the American dream. You want to have that that next generation. You want your children to succeed and be better than you, not just receive handouts because they're entitled or whatever. And you don't want to pit neighbors against neighbors because of either their job or their politics or the color of their skin or whatever the issue is. And every single thing that we've hit on, it's all been, divide and conquer.
Payouts, free, and even with respect to jobs, that notion you just give $96,000, which is insanely,
crazy money.
insanely exorbitant, well above the mean income of the American family. It's just insane. But it also completely ignores the reality that we are all social beings and that our jobs for most of us are more than just a paycheck, that we develop as human beings. We learn, we grow, we connect.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. That one thing I think that you hit on there. There's value in work. There, people derive meaning from the work they do, and it's somebody hands you a check, and you haven't done anything to earn that. The value of that check decreases. It just doesn't mean as much as when you go out and you stake your claim in the world and you work for it. And it is a real perverse disincentive for a lot of people. And I think that's a very good point that we don't hear too much of, and I think a lot of people need to hear more of it.
Yeah, the value of being in the office. The job is, for most people, a satisfying and rewarding experience. And we're seeing it in COVID-19. People want to get out. They want to get back to the office. So there's just utter failure to even consider that aspect of human behavior and economics.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the war on poverty for over 50 years now. What was it, 67, 68?
Johnson, 64.
64. Okay, 64.
Otherwise known as Ed Markey's first term.
Right. Well, there I think is the soundbite for the night. But it has been a failure. I'm Southern, so I use colloquialisms. But the tomato you grow in your own garden tastes way better and way sweeter than the one that someone hands you. And we're losing that. We're losing that generational impact of, parents being proud of putting dinner on the table and the kids seeing that and wanting your children to succeed beyond you. I mean, I push my kids because much to their dismay, I want them to do better than I did and be more educated and be more successful and have more opportunities. And when you have this, we're just going to give you $96,000 for sitting around doing nothing. We're going to, hey, maybe work a little bit under the table if you want some extra, and don't worry, the unicorns and the money trees will, take care of it all. And the next thing you know, we're going to wake up like Venezuela.
Absolutely. It's Banana Republic type of policy. It is an absolute formula for failure. All of these failed states, including Venezuela, they all began with utopian plans and grand promises, and they turned out to be absolute failures.
Yeah, no, it really is. So I guess we should probably do some humanizing questions, right? We're gonna ask them the politically incorrect questions, or are we just going to stay with, We'll
reevaluate that after.
Yeah, exactly.
You ask this man, I think he's a tough character. I think he can handle any question you throw at him. So
far away.
No, I guess, what is your, outside of politics, outside of a lawyer, outside of your family and everything like that, what is your passion? I mean, is it college football? Is it, do you have a sport that you're really into? Are you a coin collector? Do you have?
Yeah, I hope he's not a coin collector.
No. See, if he
did
is,
he lose the coin collector vote?
So, I'm a news politics junkie.
Yeah.
So this has been really fun to be running, and I'm a pro football fanatic. I played high school football and a little bit of college football.
Okay.
So what was your position?
I was an outside linebacker.
Really?
Yeah, Steve Young.
You're a little more bulked up back there. You're pretty svelte there. Now it's
a little more bulked up. Yes.
So next time we have you on, we'll bring over Matt Chatham is a good friend and neighbor, so we'll have him come over and you guys can go at it each other, see if
away from the microphones.
Yeah,
I don't want him messing up the
I
sound.
was gonna say, but we can just see if he can take a hit. It'll be fun. We'll throw him a pass, and we'll have we'll bring Oliver Zolak. We'll throw the pass, and then have Chatham hit him.
I'm picturing a Dukakis-like moment out of that.
So you tell Scott Zolak he could not have started for my high school team.
Hold on. Where's my phone?
Who's the quarterback of your high school team?
His name is Steve Young.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
All right.
So
you tell Zoe I'm calling him out.
I was going to say,
You got to be nice to Zoe. He's a good Republican.
Yes,
And he's in my district, so he's
he's the best.
And a good friend. So he will now have to give shit on on the Sports Hub. So.
I'm a huge fan of his. So
No, that's all. No, where'd you grow up?
I moved. I had this nomadic childhood. I moved 6 times growing up. So
I'm a Navy brat, so I get it. So
so I was born in Brooklyn. I lived in Queens. I lived on Long Island. I moved to Connecticut. We moved to Illinois. Then we moved back to another town in Connecticut. And then the day I graduated from high school, literally the day I graduated from high school, we got in a car and drove up to Massachusetts. And I've been here since 1980.
Okay, well now this is the part we might end up having to cut out, but given that very, very stilted, horrible
he's not like
early years. Who's your baseball team?
Yeah.
Oh, the Sox. Absolutely.
Okay, all right. I got a little nervous there because I'm like, oh, we're just going to just kill this entire interview if you say you're a Yankees fan. Mets, I'm like, all right, whatever. You're a Yankees fan. And I'm like, oh, we lost it all. Sorry. Thanks for wasting your time.
No, Fenway Park's pretty special. And
he's a Red Sox fan. He qualifies, and we're good.
New England across the board. Are you?
So
you're big Revolution fan.
Revs, total Revs.
All right, good.
My oldest boy was. His CYO coach was Danny Ainge.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Right. Yes. And my son's good friends with Danny's son.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we'd go to games, and I'd be watching my 7th grade son, and Coach Ainge would be talking to the team during the timeout, and my son would be drifting off, and I would, after the game, say, Greg, you might want to listen to Coach Ainge. He knows a little bit about basketball.
But was he talking at a higher level? Because I coach Pop Warner and
Pop Warner
with Zoe and Chatham and things like that. And sometimes they're talking especially when we were with the younger kids, we're talking to 5th and 6th graders, and they start going over these things, and you could just see the kids zone out. I'm like, they don't even know which gap you're talking about, let alone who, the guards pulling and doing this, we're doing this swim motion, everything like that. The kids are like just kind of nodding their head because they're like, oh, the guy's got a bunch of Super Bowl rings.
So the 2 coaches, it was Danny Ainge, and the assistant was Mike Dowling, the great sportscaster. Wow. Yeah, and they were lovely. I don't know either of them too well, but they were lovely, and they were really plain spoken. They
That's
coached
awesome.
At a fundamental level in a just spectacularly well. Great, 2 great people.
Now your kids are, your oldest, what, 26, 27?
Yes.
Which one? You got to get
26. I have a 26-year-old who lives in New York.
Okay.
He's in banking. I have a 23-year-old who's a paralegal in Boston. I have a 14-year-old who is itching to get back to football and isn't able to play because it's been shut down.
I know, yep.
And I have a 10-year-old, same thing. He's dying to play. They both love football, and they don't get to play.
It was very, very difficult. And they're like, oh, well, maybe you'll be able to play, flag, and it's like, well, that's great, for running around, but it's completely different. And couple of buddies of mine, they're like, yeah, especially for my kids who are linemen.
Yes.
Flag football for a lineman really, really sucks. I mean, it's just not, you're a fast kid and you can go up for a pass, all right, maybe. But, all the actual fundamentals and things like that, you lose all of that. And it's it's been unfortunate. So here's the question I get from every single person. What are you giving Massachusetts grade? What are you giving the governor a grade on the pandemic, on COVID?
I'm giving everybody incompletes. So the governor is an extremely hard worker. He's data driven, and he's doing, I believe, the absolute best he can. I would favor opening faster in terms of my orientation would be toward protecting the vulnerable and allowing as much as possible the economic.
It's the only real path forward.
Yes.
It's the only real path forward.
And that's one of the things that's always driven me crazy about this from the beginning. It's like, all right, we have, everyone says, oh, data-driven, but then we ignore all the data when it comes to certain segments. And I'm like, what we should have been doing is, all right, instead of taking this pile of money and dispersing it to everyone where it doesn't really have much of an impact, let's take that money and really focus it on, all right, the 65 plus crowd, people that are compromised,
Yeah.
and make sure that we have programs and plans in place for the people who actually need it, and then let everyone else, and I'm in favor of the mask and everything along those lines. I think I think you can do common sense safety at the same time as not shutting things down for the sake of shutting things down.
I don't think anybody shut anything down for the sake of shutting things down, but we know a lot more now than we did at the outset.
Right.
And the reality is that this disease preys upon vulnerable organs, whether they're vulnerable due to age or whether they're compromised because of some comorbidity, right? And that's the population that is really susceptible to loss of life or really serious harm. And that's the population that we ought to protect, and we ought to devote our resources to protecting it. But I say that as that's just my common sense perspective. Have you heard the story about my dad with COVID-19?
No, I haven't heard this story.
Yeah, so my dad.
I've met your dad. I met him at your on primary night.
Yeah, the victory party.
At the victory party, exactly. I was there.
Yes.
Jeff was there. We came together.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah.
I was so happy you beat we shall not speak his name because I just can't stand the man. But I was so ecstatic that you
Voldemort for Senate.
Yeah.
So my dad's 86 years old. He grew up in Queens, born in 1933. Poor kid, right? Born in the Depression. Oldest of 4 kids, 1-bedroom apartment. So he never had his own bedroom his whole life. And he had a job starting in 3rd grade, and all the money just went into the family kitty. And he never played sports. He didn't do anything. He went to St. John's. He grew up in Queens. He went to St. John's, lived at home, slept on the living room couch, went through college, joined the Marine Corps, married my mom. They had 6 kids. They put 6 kids through college. My mom went back to work once the kids started approaching college age. So she had been a stay-at-home mom. And she went back to work, and they managed to pay for their kids and provide for their retirement. Nothing fancy, but they provided for themselves. My father's home was not a happy home during the Depression. And so it was affected by some of the maladies that occur when people are closed in and things aren't going well economically. My father, to his great credit, did not pass on what issues that he confronted and to his children. And so in April, he gets COVID-19. And
he's 86.
86.
So kind of in the target market.
In the middle of the signature gathering, right? My 82-year-old mother, Peggy O'Connor, is my most prolific signature gatherer. She's sitting out every day in front of our local supermarket with a sign saying, please sign for my son. And she's gathering tons of signatures and doing great work. And then my dad comes down with COVID-19. And everything's shutting down, right? I wrote the legislature a letter about it, and we can talk about that. So in any event, my dad goes into the hospital, and my sister's the only one who can take him in. There's 6 kids, but only one can be with him. And my sister calls us that afternoon and says, the doctor said, we got to say goodbye. It's not going well. It's got to say goodbye. And so my mom calls her husband and says goodbye to him. And then my 3 youngest siblings who live out of state each call my father to say goodbye to him. And then my sister calls me. It's about 7 o'clock at night. And she says, he's done. So I was supposed to go next. And she says, he's tapped out. He's exhausted. He knows that people are calling him to say goodbye. And he's wiped out. So we're gonna shut down the calls. So that's it, like that. And so I go upstairs. I cry. I go tell my wife and kids, and I'm just, doing what you do in that moment of realization. And then my phone rings. My cell phone rings, and it's my dad's number. And my dad doesn't call me a lot on his cell phone, right? So I'm looking, thinking, this is either good or bad.
Yeah, you're thinking the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pick it up, kind of expecting my sister, and it's my dad. And I'm like, hey, Dad. And he's like, Kev. And there's this awkward pause. And it's really, I'm thinking this is probably the last phone call I'm ever going to have with my dad. And I'm trying to figure out what to say. And then I hear him say, so what do you think Brady's going to do?
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm like, okay, 2020 season, I think we're going to be good. And so then they put him on a Z-Pack and hydroxychloroquine, and he makes it through. He gets there in 9 days. He's tough. He had like 2 comorbidity. I mean, 86 years old. He
has shit to do.
But he's a Marine. He's tough dude, right? So he gets out. He's fine. And then after it's done, we're sitting down, and he says to me, let me tell you something. I've lived through a depression, and I've lived through COVID-19. And I can tell you, you do not want to live through a depression. So that, all the collateral consequences, the suicides, the alcoholism, the suicide ideation, the bankruptcies, the loss of jobs, the stress that weighs upon small business owners and people who make a living with their hands or in the hospitality industry, which is so important, such an important part of the Massachusetts economy. All that enormous stress and burden and everything, that's not on the dashboard right now.
Right.
And I think it should be. I think that the purpose of policymakers is to balance all of the considerations and to weigh all that. So I give nothing but respect and credit to the leaders who have had to handle all of this, and I know they are doing the absolute best that they can, and they're doing what they think is the right thing. But my perspective is informed by my father's experience and guidance, and then just being a dad and knowing that. And I had a small, I owned a law firm. I own a law firm right now with my wife. But like it's really important for us to connect as teammates, as human beings in the workplace, and to create wealth. The reality is that the United States is not operating within a bubble, and our children are not operating in competition just with each other. They're in a global economy.
100%.
And so the children right now, the MCAS have been shut down, and they've been shut down because we know with 100% certainty that children are being harmed academically by these school shutdowns. That's an absolute certainty. I think the American Academy of Juvenile or
Pediatrics.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm not good with my acronyms, but that's 100% certainty. Children are being harmed right now. Not to mention other people who are on the ropes for economic reasons or emotional reasons or mental health issues. So we gotta open up as fast as possible. And what people have to remember when they're picking between Ed Markey and Kevin O'Connor is that the answer and the solution will come from private sector innovation. And when you cast your vote, make your bet as to who's gonna create the economic conditions that will lead to the innovation that will help us solve this problem, the climate crisis, and you name any other problem. And I'm the one that can go in and support that investment, that hard work, that productive activity. And I can also regulate them. Ed Markey's getting a lot of PAC money. Kevin O'Connor is this is one family and some great staff, a small staff, a great staff, and a lot of volunteers. This is organic. This is a citizen legislative movement. We have the preparation to add so much from a policy perspective above and beyond what we're getting from our current senator, and we have the capacity to add so much in terms of promoting American values in unity and to getting us through this, powering through this, and seeing brighter days.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to.
I was going to say I had a couple more like final. I'm like that. We go. That's
you can step on them.
That was
too
100%.
Good. The website is KOC4Senate, FOR Senate.com. Please go check out and support Kevin. If you can volunteer for his campaign, please do so. If you can give him some money, please do that. Get a yard sign, go out, knock on doors when we can, and as we get closer to election, he's a good man. He's the man we need down in Washington for sure.
Okay. And most importantly, vote. Tell your neighbors to vote.
Yeah.
Tell your friends. I mean, because it truly is, we have a grassroots opportunity. Nobody's going to the polls this year voting for Ed Markey. They're going in, they're either voting for Trump or they're voting for Biden. That's what's driving them to the polls. And while they're there, like, oh, I know that name. And if that's what you're going for, and you're just getting, you want the same old, and not have leadership and not have someone that actually cares about you, I mean, you have an opportunity to get a new, fresh face with new ideas. I don't care what industry you're in or what company or anything like that. You're in the same exact place doing the same exact job for 44 years. There's no way you can be fresh. There's no way you can be energetic. You're stale. You're in a routine. You already have it all figured out. And you know which buttons to push and you know what things to say. But you're not working. You're not innovating. You're not reaching out to the people. I mean, I can say it because he doesn't reach out. You know, Joe Kennedy right now, I could call him right now and he'll pick up my phone call. Elizabeth Warren's staff, I can call right now and they will pick up my phone call if I have a need. Ed Markey doesn't. He doesn't connect. He doesn't seem to care. And, you know, that's, I was a very early endorser of Kevin's. And
yes, you were.
The reason was because you cared. Because we sat down and I looked in your eye and you're doing it for the right reasons. And we as a people deserve that. We deserve someone that's going to not only fight for us and do all those, great things, but there's someone that's going to care and listen and be there, able to take that phone call. And I'm very proud that you're here. Thank you so much for being our very first guest. And I can't wait to celebrate with you on the evening of the 3rd.
Thank you. I'm honored to be the first guest. I'm really grateful. It was a great show. And please, everyone, vote for me.
Yes, vote for Kevin O'Connor. The website is koc4senate.com. Check them out. Don't forget to vote on November 3rd.
Yes, it's
November 3rd.
Or early voting. If you're early voting, if you already have your ballot, fill out that. It's the second thing on the ballot on the left-hand side. Kevin O'Connor. Fill in that dot.
Kevin O'Connor for Senate. You are watching and listening to the Commonwealth Conservative podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Semon. He is the man with the plan. He is Shawn Dooley, and our guest is Kevin O'Connor. Vote KOC for Senate. Good night.